Recent developments in women's basketball have highlighted significant disparities in how different players receive defensive attention and media coverage. Analysis of recent games reveals that certain rookies who previously enjoyed favorable treatment are now facing increased scrutiny and defensive pressure, particularly following content creators drawing attention to these patterns. The Dallas Wings' recent performance against Seattle demonstrates this shift dramatically. Previously, one particular rookie had maintained consistent scoring output, recording double digits in 30 consecutive games, the longest such streak by a guard in 25 years. However, this streak ended abruptly when opponents began implementing more aggressive defensive strategies. Video analysis shows a stark contrast between early season defensive coverage and current approaches. Paige Bueckers was a non-factor in the first half of that Valkyries game yesterday. We cannot make this up. 0.5 assists, 1 steal or 4 from the field. Bueckers has scored at least 10 points in 30 straight games, the longest after streak in the league. She scored at least 10 points in 30 straight games. Now, I'll tell you what happened. I'll tell you real quick. Look, this right here sums up. Earlier footage reveals minimal defensive pressure, with defenders often allowing uncontested shots and failing to apply consistent pressure. Recent games show completely different defensive schemes, with multiple defenders consistently shadowing the player and eliminating easy scoring opportunities. The Seattle matchup proved particularly revealing. The rookie managed only 9 points and 9 assists, breaking the impressive scoring consistency that had defined the early season. More concerning was the first half performance, where the player registered 0 points, 0 field goals made on 4 attempts, and minimal overall impact. This represents a dramatic departure from previous dominant performances. Defensive footage from the recent contest shows systematic pressure rarely seen earlier in the season. Multiple defenders consistently denied easy looks, forced difficult shots, and eliminated the comfortable scoring opportunities that had become routine. The defensive intensity appeared coordinated and deliberate, suggesting teams had studied previous game film and adjusted their approach accordingly. The emotional response to this increased pressure became evident during the game. Footage captured moments of visible frustration, including instances where the player appeared overwhelmed by the defensive attention. Coaching staff expressed concern about the physical nature of the defense, questioning whether officials were adequately protecting players from excessive contact. This situation mirrors treatment previously reserved for other high-profile rookies, particularly those who generated significant media attention and fan interest. The comparison becomes particularly relevant when examining how different players have been defended throughout their rookie campaigns. Some faced intense pressure from their first professional game, while others enjoyed extended periods of favorable treatment. The timing of this defensive shift appears significant. Content creators and analysts have begun highlighting the disparity in defensive attention, pointing out statistical anomalies and questioning competitive balance. Social media discussions gain traction, drawing attention to patterns that had previously gone unnoticed by mainstream coverage. League dynamics suggest organizational awareness of these discussions. The sudden coordinated change in defensive approaches across multiple teams indicates possible communication or strategic adjustments at higher levels. This type of systematic change rarely occurs organically without some form of league-wide recognition of competitive imbalances. Historical context provides additional insight into these patterns. Professional sports leagues often adjust to maintain competitive balance and address concerns about fairness. When certain players receive preferential treatment that affects competitive integrity, corrective measures typically follow once the disparities become publicly acknowledged. The coaching response reveals institutional recognition of the changed circumstances. Public statements about player protection and physicality suggest awareness that the treatment has shifted significantly. These comments echo similar concerns raised about other players who faced intense defensive pressure throughout their careers. Statistical analysis supports the narrative of changed treatment. The dramatic performance decline coincides perfectly with the implementation of more aggressive defensive schemes. This correlation suggests that previous success may have been partially attributed to favorable defensive attention rather than purely individual excellence. Scorn 10 points in the last 30 games. What was going on in the last 30 games, right? Caitlin was getting hurt. The Fever who had ups and downs. Then you had superstars like Rana Stewart getting hurt. Yeah, so the league was kinda in a funk. No one was paying attention to this pace of Paige was just getting off that wheel. She was getting off. Well, sis, you know, all of the attention isn't on Caitlin, and y'all trying to prop team defensive strategies now mirror approaches used against established stars and proven threats. Multiple defenders, physical coverage and coordinated schemes represent standard professional defensive tactics that were notably absent during the earlier portion of the season. The broader implications extend beyond individual performance metrics. Questions about competitive balance, equal treatment, and organizational decision-making have emerged from these developments. Fans and analysts are examining whether similar disparities exist elsewhere and how league dynamics influence individual players' success. Media coverage has shifted accordingly, with increased scrutiny of performance under pressure and questions about sustainability of early season success. The narrative has evolved from celebrating consistent excellence to analyzing adaptability and resilience under adverse conditions. Future performance will likely determine whether this represents a temporary adjustment period or a more permanent recalibration of expectations. Professional athletes typically adapt to increase defensive attention, but the success of such adaptations varies significantly based on individual skill sets and mental fortitude. The situation highlights broader themes about rookie treatment, media influence, and competitive balance in professional sports. It demonstrates how external pressure and public awareness can influence organizational decision-making and strategic approaches across multiple teams. League officials face questions about consistency in officiating and player protection. Agent, somebody in her camp, is like, hey, the way the WNBA is treating you makes no sense. The way Nike is treating you makes no sense. And so she's got a circle around her, her agent, some woman that she works closely with, is like, hey, you know, you and the Indian, the contrast between early season treatment and current defensive intensity raises concerns about whether rules are being applied equally across all players and situations. Fan engagement has intensified around these developments, with social media discussions focusing on fairness, competitive balance, and the role of external influence in shaping league dynamics. These conversations reflect broader concerns about transparency and equal treatment in professional sports. The ongoing situation will likely continue evolving as teams assess the effectiveness of their new defensive approaches and as the player adapts to increased pressure. The resolution of these dynamics will provide insight into both individual resilience and league-wide competitive balance mechanisms. A detail that stood out recently came from Sophie's remarks about Caitlin Clark's condition. The description given was that her return is determined on a day-to-day basis. While simple on the surface, the phrasing suggests more than just injury management. The explanation was that Clark is close to returning, but competing in the WNBA is unlike other levels. The talent across the league is deeper than ever, and to step onto the floor requires not just ability but top form. That was the point emphasized. She could already be playing elsewhere, but here, the standards are higher than to another level. I'm like, how can we milk this? Hey, you know what? All this hand checking, all this, we gotta start adjusting rules to give Michael more freedom. We can't let these Jordan rules exist. This is a rocket ship that can take us to the moon. And so there's another partnership between Michael Jordan and David Stern, and everybody went the same direction, and it pissed the Detroit Pistons. My buddy, Isaiah, her return depends on regaining complete game readiness. What complicates the situation is the tension around Clark's relationship with both the league and her team. Reports indicate her camp, which includes family and representation, has raised concerns over how she has been treated, both by the WNBA and corporate partners such as Nike. The claim is that alignment simply does not exist between Clark's team and the league office, or even the Indiana Fever organization. To understand this, comparisons are often drawn to the NBA's history. The Detroit Pistons, my buddy Isaiah Thomas, pissed them off. Everybody in the league could see, like, hey man, they're favoring Michael Jordan and David Stern, and then blocked out all the noises, because man, it's going to lead us all to a big bag of money and more relevance and traction, and they did it. The WNBA has made it clear, and the Indiana Fever, to me, have made it clear, hey, we're not in this all together. Caitlin Clark has her team of people. We have our team of people. When Magic Johnson and Larry Bird entered the league, the leadership under David Stern coordinated with ownership to maximize their presence. That foundation was later built upon with Michael Jordan, where even rule adjustments were implemented to enhance his performance and visibility. The strategy was clear: unite behind a star and drive business growth. The success is undeniable. In contrast, the WNBA and the Indiana Fever appear to be moving in different directions with Clark. Rather than a partnership, the approach has resembled a struggle. Clark's arrival brought unmatched attention, yet the treatment suggests resistance rather than collaboration. The perception is that the league is prioritizing an ideological identity over maximizing commercial opportunity. This view argues that image and message are being elevated above revenue. The case of Stephanie White is often mentioned as an example of how the league promotes certain figures. Had on, but it's just what I think, and I don't, to a lot of people I won't sound crazy. This league is about the LGBTQ and setting up lesbian women as icons for your children. And Caitlin, until we can get you fully on board with that message, we're not leaning into you. And so we're going to bring in a coach, Stephanie White, who was just like you. Attractive little white girl from the Midwest, White followed a path that mirrored Clark in some ways: a Midwest upbringing, success at the high school and college levels, and entry into the WNBA. Over time, White embraced the cultural direction of the league, which made her a representative of its values. The suggestion is that Clark faces pressure to move in that same direction before being fully embraced as the face of the league. This dynamic has created ongoing uncertainty. Until Clark is fully aligned with what the WNBA prioritizes, skepticism about her treatment remains. Critics argue that the league presents itself as more committed to advancing specific cultural messages than to expanding its audience and financial base. Another example of this divide came when the Indiana Fever recently promoted Kelsey Mitchell as a candidate for league MVP. Mitchell is a respected player with a strong personal background, including a close relationship with her late father. Her season has been strong, but many observers do not see her as the most valuable player in the league. Nevertheless, the franchise appeared more comfortable spotlighting her achievements than Clark's. This raises questions. Some believe the decision was meant to avoid locker room conflict, as too much emphasis on Clark could create resentment among teammates. However, the counterargument is that a franchise should be built around its generational star, even if that means removing those who cannot accept it. Mitchell and Clark could form a productive backcourt duo, but if any tension exists, the responsibility of adjustment should not fall on Clark.